My apologies for being late by 1 minute. I'll read the introduction out for the benefit of people listening. For the purpose of public transparency and accountability, this meeting will be live streamed online. Details of how to access the live stream will be made available on the Council's website in due course. For health and safety reasons, in accordance with our risk assessment, the public are asked to follow the meeting via this method online, and they're not being allowed to attend any physical meeting in person. Members of the public wishing to speak at the meeting will be able to do so remotely, and they have been provided with details of how to do this. They'll be allowed 3 minutes to speak each, and they'll get a 30-second warning before the end of the 3 minutes. Are there any apologies for absence?
Apologies have been received from Councillor Goodrick, Councillor Mason and Councillor Thackeray. Councillor Graham will substitute for Councillor Goodrick. Councillor Keel will substitute for Councillor Mason, and Councillor Rigby will substitute for Councillor Thackeray.
Thank you. Can you all hear me on this?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's good. Then you can all hear us.
Yes, thank you.
For the benefit of members over on that side, I have the screen in front of me, so I don't always see you when you lift your hands. So if I miss anybody, please shout. Can we look at the minutes, please? Are we all satisfied that this is a correct record? Oh, so, I beg your pardon. Declarations of interest, yes. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Potter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been lobbied on item number 7. It's personal, non-pecuniary. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Sorry, I've been lobbied on item 6 and item 8.
Personal.
Personal, non-pecuniary.
Councillor Keel. Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've been lobbied on items 6, 7 and 8, personal, non-pecuniary.
Councillor Hope. Councillor Windrus.
Thank you, Chair. I've been lobbied on 6 and 8, personal, non-prejudicial. Thank you.
I always... Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been lobbied on items 6, 7 and 8, personal, non-prejudicial, non-pecuniary, and in respect of item 3, the minutes, I will abstain as I was absent last month. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, when everybody else seems to be lobbied on these things, I feel I'm wondering which emails I've missed. But if I have been lobbied, I'm not aware of it. I don't know. Can the experts at the back help? Can you help at the back of the room? Okay, well, while they're sorting that out, we'll move on. Are we all satisfied that the minutes are correct? And if they are, could somebody propose them, please? Councillor Potter proposes them.
Yep.
Seconder? Councillor Windruss, thank you. Can we all vote, please? All in favour? Can I see your hands? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that means that there's a lot of people here who weren't here who were not at that meeting. Thank you. So the minutes are approved.
We try and get this sound resolved before we go any further. Am I coming out of any speakers there, or am I coming out of... Paul?
It is coming out of the microphones, as you say. But can the members of the public, they can all hear, can they? They all seem
Yes.
to be nodding.
For the most part.
It's a bit like Norman Collier, I'm afraid.
The volume control, you mean? On the left-hand side? Is that reducing? So how is that sounding now? It's not working. We've never had this happen before. Yeah, I know, but we've used these before and it's not happened before when you've done this. So what's changed?
If members are content, we could continue being aware that the equipment is not working as it should do, and perhaps the technicians will try and sort this out while we proceed. I know it's not a very satisfactory way of going about the business of the council, but yes, thank you. So we now come to urgent business. I have no urgent business. And we go on to the schedule of items to be determined by the committee. And we will start with item 6, which is a full application at Howsham, number 2100392 FUL, erection of replacement dwelling, one number 4-bed, 4-detached, 4-bed detached dwelling with associated parking and landscaping, with change of use of land to rear to form additional domestic curtilage to include demolition of outbuilding and extension and alteration of existing stables to form home, office and store at Wychwood, Village Street, Howsham, Moulton. I believe, Rachel, this is your matter. Would you like to take us through your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Can everybody hear me? Kind of.
Yes, thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Yes, so this scheme essentially has two elements. There is the replacement of the existing dwelling, and then there is the change of use of part of the smallholding land to form the domestic curtilage, and the extension and alteration of some stables and demolition of a Nissen hut. And this is to form a home office and store. The scheme has undergone revisions, essentially to the dwelling and to the boundary wall, and clarifications have been received regarding distance of the extended outbuilding stable in relation to the applicants and neighbours' boundaries. Nothing there to add to the reporter. The late papers have principally concerned submissions regarding the title of the property, and a subsequent plan has been provided which gives dimensions that have that specifically set out key distances between measured features, and that is before members. In essence, the scheme doesn't go and doesn't extend beyond the applicant's land ownership, and therefore the application satisfies the procedural requirements of applications. But it is nevertheless important that accurate plans are provided for all parties, and that the location plan is now provided with dimensions of key distances. And this plan will be incorporated into the plan's condition if members are minded to approve. We have had 2 submissions, which I will go through in detail later, but if I can just start by showing the photographs, please, Hayley. They're coming up. So yes, members, this photograph shows in effect it's a Google map image, so I'll give Google the copyright, and it basically shows the extent of the sort of general area of the site in relation to, you've got the existing dwelling towards the west, and the frontage of Main Street, and then you've got the garden area, which then basically finishes where there's an area of hard standing. And then you've got the Nissen hut and the stables, which are part of the proposal to form the store and office area for the domestic use of the house. And then beyond that, to the east, is the open sort of paddock area and larger field that are within the applicant's ownership. Next slide, please. So this is taken from Housham Main Street, looking in an easterly direction towards the application property. To the north is number 10, that's a listed property, and then to the rear you will be able to see number 9, Blacksmith's Cottage, in the rear of the site. Next slide, please. And this is the property from the rear, so you can see how the property's been extended and adapted over time. You can see the, in effect, the relationship between this property and the surrounding properties. And if we go to the next slide, there you can see the gable end of Blacksmith's Cottage. This is one of the objectors to the application. And you can judge the distances of the existing property, which will be coming slightly closer to the number 9, but we've considered materially that that doesn't increase any level of overlooking. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the Grade 1 listed chapel church area of, I think it's St John's, and you can see the application site, you can see the roof profile, and obviously this part of the property has an important contribution to the setting of the conservation area, but also the setting of the listed building, because you can appreciate it from key vantage points within the churchyard. Next slide, please. And this is taken from the southern boundary, looking across to number 8, and that is their kitchen, dining, living space. And so that's to give sort of context to the surrounding site. Next slide, please. And then this slide here is, getting quite a bit of feedback now, is basically to give members a sense of the scale of the existing dwelling and its relationship to number 10, which is a lower property, a smaller property, but it gives you a sense of the scale and the massing, and that it wouldn't, in terms of it being moved and slightly extended, it wouldn't result in an unacceptable overbearing effect. Next slide, please. So this picture is to give you a sense of context with regards to the outbuilding that is proposed to be extended and the structures that are to be demolished. and then that will then lead into the existing garden area of Wychwood, and then you can see Wychwood in the sort of left-hand side of the shot. You will also, members, I think, notice the Lilandi hedge that is in effect to the rear of the outbuilding, which is to be extended. That hedge is within the ownership of number 9 Howsham, Blacksmith's Cottage, and some pruning works would be necessary in order to gain a better access to it, but that would still be able to take place on the applicant's side, and therefore under common law they can undertake that, and there is no reason or suggestion that the hedge will be cut down, undermined by the proposals. Next slide, please. So this is viewing it sort of head on, so members can appreciate the scale of the building that's to be extended, the height and density of the boundary feature between the applicant site and the adjoining neighbouring property, and the blank gable elevation of number 9. Thank you. Next slide. Yep, and that's just to give members a sense of the context out in an easterly direction from the edge of the building that would be being converted. And essentially it's that edge of that building and that gate that would demarcate, in effect, the boundary of the extended curtilage. And then you have a small paddock area, and then you have the larger field area, but they're not part of the red outline of the application. Next slide, please. So yes, this is the, in effect, clarified location plan that's been submitted subsequent to the late pages. In essence, it's no different to the plan that members did receive as part of the late pages. The key differences are the fact that it denotes where the new brick wall to the northern extent of the boundary will extend to, which is in effect abutting number 9 Howsham, and it also gives key sort of measured points in relation to distances between structures and boundary features to in effect give a sort of record of the position as it currently stands, and what it would ultimately achieve if members are minded to approve the application and it's undertaken. Thank you. Right, okay, if I can take members through 2 representations that we received that weren't part of the late pages. The first is from Dr. Victoria Cadman of Blacksmith's Cottage, number 9 Howsham. And she writes, following notification of planning recommendation to approve the above application, I am writing to reiterate my objections. Owing to the short notice between the notification and the new information posted on the planning portal 25th of August, this remains a very short summary, and I will submit salient detail direct to councillors via email and or post. I apologise for any inconvenience this may cause. In summary, the key points are issues of scale, layout, proportion and density of the proposed Home Office building in relation to its setting within the conservation area of Howsham and the building's proximity to my house, a historic from 17th century smithy/forge. The potential for significant damage or loss to trees which ensure privacy of my rear garden and attenuate light and noise from the proposed Home Office building. Overbearing / crowding / overshadowing from the proposed Home Office to my rear elevation, particularly the single-storey kitchen. Issues of privacy arising from the rear elevation of the new house at Wychwood. I note that the new site plans have been posted, however these do not appear to resolve the ambiguities and inconsistencies with respect to the position of the boundary and the buildings as shown in the various site plans submitted with the application as well as my title plan. As previously stated, these must be resolved. In effect, what the objector has done is they've summarised the points that they've already made to the local planning authority, and so they have been addressed within the report as it's written. There is a plan before members which details the dimensions and reflects the plan as per the late pages and gives the dimensions. As I said earlier, the local planning authority must be satisfied that it has accurate plans to assess a proposal and that the correct ownership certificates are completed. And in this regard, this is the case with this application. The structure is on the applicant's land, and any matters around access are a civil matter. If members are minded to approve this application, we would look to update condition 2 to reflect the fact that a revised plan has been submitted, which clarifies further details. The second submission is from Maggie and Richard Groom of 7 Howsham Village Street. We are writing to urge you to refuse planning application reference 21/00392/FUL relating to Witchwood in Howsham. There are 2 main reasons for our objection. The design of the proposed new dwelling is out of keeping with a conservation village in which vernacular architecture and materials are prominent. We believe that the front elevation's design will be detrimental to Howsham's distinctive street scene, consisting as it does of predominantly gold and ironstone cottages dating from the 17th and 18th centuries. We also have concerns about the rear elevation's design, featuring large windows and a flat roof which we fear could be used as a balcony, resulting in a loss of privacy for near neighbours like us. We believe that the proposal to build separate office accommodation represents an intensification on a domestic plot, as it involves not 1 but 2 home offices, complete with toilet. With many people working from home these days, a home office is not unusual. Were the office accommodation to be located inside the proposed new house, there would be no problem. But this is a freestanding building and could be rented out by the property's present or future owners. In addition, we would like serious consideration to be given to the impact of the proposed development on a sensitive environment. Howsham is a small conservation village with houses down one side of its single street, graced by 14 listed properties in Main Street alone. Even the phone box is listed. In addition, there is Grade 1 listed St John's Church and Howsham Hall, along with Grade 2 Derwent Court at the bottom of the village. The Hall's parkland is listed Grade 2 and lies in an area of outstanding natural beauty, while the village itself is in an area of high landscape value. The government's new planning policy does not just include eco-elements for new builds, but also requires beauty and vernacular design to be considered in the decision-making process. Beauty may be in the eye of the beholder, but building in the vernacular certainly isn't, and the proposed house does not appear to be in this category. The site is in a line of houses in the village street, and while the existing building is in no way in keeping, it was constructed decades before Howsham was granted conservation area status in 2001. The listed building system was introduced in the 1940s, but seemingly without understanding of the damage which can be caused by erecting an out-of-keeping building among a row of period dwellings. Now, with the conservation classification, there can surely be no excuse for constructing something so out of keeping. Other applicants in the village have had to jump through hoops for their applications to be deemed acceptable, and one, an innocuous conservatory at the rear, admittedly for one of the listed houses, was refused. It seems that one only has to apply the word eco and other considerations go out of the window. But with the new government proposals involving appearance and vernacular considerations, whilst not yet in law, here would be a good place to start. If this application were to be granted, it would surely create a precedent, making other similarly unsympathetic developments difficult to refuse. There are many lovely villages in Rydale which may well suffer as a consequence. Perhaps residents who have seen such buildings on a daily basis might have a different perspective from planners who simply follow regulations. Surely eco is made more desirable when the building also blends with the surroundings. We have lived in Howsham since 1979, loving the place for its setting and beauty. Over the years we have, with other residents and the backing of Rydale Council, successfully resisted inappropriate developments, which is why it is still the peaceful special village it is today. The correct decision will enhance it even more. We will all live with the wrong one for a long time. We ask that you refuse this application or possibly defer a final decision so that we can feel assured that our objections to the design and potential intensification of use can be examined in detail. We hope you will feel able to take our views into account when determining this application. Thank you for your time. This does raise some issues which officers would like to expand on in relation to the report that's been prepared. The objector is critical of the use of brick as a material. Well, in principle, the use of brick is acceptable in Howsham. It is a material that is used on a number of properties within the village. The design of the windows has been considered in detail within the report, and as the report refers to, there is to be no balcony within the proposal. The objection refers to the intensification of use and potential commercialisation of a domestic plot. Officers want to stress that this is for domestic use. The very fact that the planning permission seeks to change the use of land to domestic curtilage is a key aspect of that. And furthermore, the description of development for which planning permission has been sought describes it as a home office. The fact that contains 2 offices is not considered to be a material issue in itself. If I can speak from experience, I live in a house that now has 2 offices in it, with my husband working in one bedroom and me working in another. And therefore, that in itself isn't actually a typical intensification of use. In terms of the proposal, it's not seeking to increase vehicular movements to the property, and the property is to be well insulated, and there is no windows or doors on any of the elevations which would in effect face a property in close proximity. The proposal has been very much considered within the round, and although the objectors have stated that it's not planning law to consider matters of design and architecture, actually in relation to a conservation area it absolutely is. There is a statutory duty placed on the local planning authority to consider the all aspects of a proposal in relation to the character and appearance of the conservation area, and to give it special regard in that consideration process. So each application is also considered on its own merits, and officers do consider that it will be both a sustainable building with sustainable build features, and that it will materially enhance the conservation area. And then in essence, it represents good design on that basis, considering all aspects of the building's proposals in the round, both for the replacement dwelling and also the formation of the domestic office and storage area. And I'd like to stop there. Thank you very much.
Oh, it is working. We have 2 speakers. One is Victoria Cadman, who I think wrote the letter that you read out before. Are you there, Mrs. Cadman? Are you there, Mrs. Cadman? Yes. Right. Okay. Yes. In that case, can we hear Mr. Charlton, please?
Hello, I'm ready when you are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, start whenever you're ready. You have 3 minutes.
We're a local family. My wife Liz grew up in Norton, and we have lived in Howsham for 7 years. Our 2 boys attend the local primary school in Langton, where Liz also works. The beautiful rural setting is a key factor in where we have chosen to raise our children. Howsham is very much home to us. We enjoy the community and want the designed house to be our forever home, which will be able to accommodate multiple generations. Our architect has helped us design a home that is eco-friendly and sensitive in its aesthetic to the area. Due to the pandemic, I am now a home worker. I will benefit from a dedicated workspace. The plans also give Liz a dedicated space to create her art. Previous to this application, we have tried and failed to find a way to achieve the space we need. Our earlier planning application and pre-apps all met with objection. We have acknowledged our previous efforts fell significantly short of what is the sympathetic and correct way to enhance Howsham. However, we haven't given up on something that could be really special. The main turning point in our journey was appointing the right architect in Louise Priestman, who is a conservation accredited architect. In our initial meetings with Louise, we spent a lot of time going over our previous planning history, and one of the key points she made to us was that every objection had to be addressed. In doing this, we became aware of how far from mark we'd been in our earlier designs. Louise produced an in-depth report on the vernacular style that is unique to Howsham, using the conservation report and her own observations. From this excellent base of understanding of what makes Howsham special, we believe that she has designed an exceptional family home that respects its setting, utilises eco-elements critical to the environment and wildlife, and will provide us with a family home where we can grow and look after every member. Louise also looked at recently completed extensions in the village and the wider area, which were contemporary in nature. A similar approach to what was found locally has been applied in designing the lower level of the rear aspect. Our planned family home will enhance the village setting by removing the less than attractive dormer bungalow. It really is an ugly duckling. We have modern brick, UPVC windows and plastic cladding. There is reported asbestos present in the buildings, which would be safer if removed and dealt with professionally. It lacks designated workspace, which is clearly important nowadays. We are pleased that one of our outbuildings is suitable to be repurposed into the Home Office, as this will maintain the agricultural aesthetic adjacent to the historic Toft lands. We absolutely love the proposed scheme and all the opportunities that it will offer us in terms of extended family living and working. We appreciate the planning officer's patience while we went through a long learning curve. We are grateful that she also believes in this project and is recommending approval. We strongly believe that the submitted application takes on board all of the feedback from the planning officer and reflects our beautiful village. We trust that the committee sees that we are just a local family seeking to create a better family home that is reflective of the conservation area's special characteristics and will better stand the test of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask if members could refer to page 37, which shows the elevations of the proposed building? Would it be possible to put the pictures of the existing building up so we can see the two next to each other? I'm just trying to look at the effect of the large window that's appeared on is proposed on the rear elevation. On the report, it's page 37. On the display, there were several photographs showing the rear elevation of the existing property. More specifically, the dormers. Sorry, thank you for that. I'm just trying to compare. It's a bit difficult to do that, but thanks anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? In that case, we will go into debate. I'm not sure if it's Councillor Graham's or Councillor Cleary's.
It's both of us. Councillor Graham, would you like to lead?
Well, I can tell you that Dr. Cadman has rung me on several occasions. I've also received her letters, and all I can say is she was in an extremely distressed state when she rang me, because she felt that justice was not being done. She felt that her letters hadn't been sufficiently well answered, and she had this idea that somehow things were being altered on an almost daily basis in order to improve the situation of the proposal. Now, whether or not that is entirely accurate, I don't know. But I do know that, as far as I'm concerned, a site visit would be very, very useful.
Thank you. Again, it's a question, Councillor Cleary.
No, we're in debate now.
Sorry, we're on debate, yes, I beg your pardon. Yes, Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I concur with that. Leaving aside the personal circumstances of the objectors, I think there are one or two items that would be better on, one or two questions or deliberations would be easier with a site visit. Most particularly, I think, with the proximity and the exact siting of the proposed Home Office. So I would second a site visit, Mr. Chairman.
Proposed and seconded. Are there any other people who wish to speak? if you're content to vote on the site visit before we, without going into debate on the merits, that's up to members. If you wish to speak on the merits of the case, you're at liberty to speak now.
Right. Well, I have to say I actually have visited the site myself a couple of times. Not round the back, but certainly from the front. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Rachel on a very detailed, comprehensive and thorough report, and one with which I agree with every aspect of, and notably how it deals with objections. The sustainability standards, or sort of energy efficiency, which has been mentioned, appear to be impressively high, which seems to be of concern to many individuals like this, while apparently being of little interest to major developers or national policymakers, sadly. I'd like to refer to page 15, where impact on the conservation area in 6.4, and what attracted my attention in italics, where it says special attention shall be paid to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character or appearance of that area. Now, from my own observations, this application will considerably enhance the Howsham street scene, and while it may be subjective purely, I thoroughly approve of the design of the front of the building in terms of the way it sits with the rest of the street scene, and I also approve of the rear of the building in that more modernistic style, which to my mind is very agreeable and would fit in quite adequately with the area. So I would be quite happy to propose approval of this application, but it's up to members whether they want a site visit or not. Thank you.
So you're speaking against the site visit?
Yes.
Right. Does anybody else wish to speak? No? I'll give my own view, which is basically that I think the planning officers have done a tremendously good job on this site, which I feel that the design improves no end, except for one thing, and I'm not at all happy with the window at the back, which doesn't seem to me to be consistent with the general layout of the conservation area. It's obviously intended to have be a wide window with a wide view, and therefore it's going to be seen from far and wide as well. So I'm not particularly happy with that aspect of that of the proposals. Whether or not that would actually lead me to oppose or to oppose the application and to vote against it, I don't know. I think a site visit would be a good idea. So I will support a site visit. Councillor Keele.
Yeah, I think I would certainly support a site visit on this. I think it is an excellent report, and I think the front design is very, very good and will fit in much better to the street scene than what is currently there. And I commend the designers of that. I think the key bit for me is the Home Office side of the proposal, and I think it's much harder to judge that just from the photos that we've got. So I would prefer to see that in situ and see how that relates to the rest of the other buildings in the area. So I certainly would support a site visit.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Okay, so we have a proposal for a site visit which has been seconded. Can we have a vote, please? Those people...
Chairman, do you want me to just go down the names for the benefit of...
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Gary. Do the officers wish to come back on that before
No,
we
Chairman,
go to the vote?
clear that you want to have a vote for a site inspection, but for the benefit of people listening in, if I go through the names in alphabetical order and then just, it's for a site inspection or against. Thank you. Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Brackstone. Councillor Cleary.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hope.
For.
Councillor Keel.
For.
Councillor Mackenzie.
For.
Councillor Potter.
Against.
Councillor Ryby.
For.
Councillor Windress.
Abstain.
So, Chairman, I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 votes for a site inspection, 2 against and 1 abstention. So we will make arrangements for a site inspection at the end of the meeting, Chairman, but it's usually in a fortnight's or so's time.
Thank you. Which is the full application, application number 2100460 FUL. It's for the erection of a replacement building for general purpose agricultural storage, the housing of livestock and workshop, use following demolition of the existing buildings or structures used for general purpose agricultural storage. And the address is buildings at Boynton Lane, Butterwick, Malton. I believe you're dealing with this, Ellie. Would you like to make your report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Members, this site is located at the eastern end of Boynton Lane in Butterwick, Malton. The site is a small holding where the applicant currently keeps and breeds a small range of livestock, including alpacas, sheep, goats, as well as some chickens. The application is for the erection of an agricultural storage building to be used for general purpose agricultural storage and workshop use. It is also intended to be used to house livestock during periods of bad weather or when giving birth. The application area is situated at the northern end of the overall site, on the site of an existing dilapidated and unsightly lawful structure, which consists of 2 shipping containers and a covered area between them. The new building is proposed to be situated on the same footprint as the existing structure, and is proposed to be finished in a green stained weatherboarding under a green sheet roof. Members will note from the report that there have been a number of objections to the proposed development from occupiers of neighbouring properties, and these are addressed in the report. The parish meeting was consulted on each revision of the application but did not respond. The Environment Agency has raised no objections, and the Environmental Health Officer has recommended a condition to secure appropriate manure management at the site. We have received one further objection and information which was sent in late last night and earlier today, which is available on members' desks. This raises concerns around how the site is currently being used and raises questions about the applicant's longer-term intentions for the site. The objection claims that the site is currently being used as a petting zoo or alpaca retreat type attraction, and included a link to a public Facebook group for the site, which appears to indicate the site is open to the public and operating on an appointment basis. The agent confirmed that this group was set up to show the applicant's friends and family what happens on their small holding and invite them to visit. In response to the further information we've received, officers have reminded the agent that the use of the site for the purposes other than agriculture would be subject to planning control, and planning permission would be required for a material change of use of the site. Notwithstanding this matter, the proposed building would support agricultural activity, including the applicant's intention to breed alpacas at the site. The building is proposed on that basis, and the application has been considered on that basis. It would support agriculture, albeit on a small scale, and is considered that and it is considered that it can be accommodated without detriment to the landscape. There are no objections from statutory consultees, so if we could go to the slideshow. Thank you. So this is just an aerial view of the site. So it's situated at the very eastern end of Boynton Lane. The blue line there represents the boundary of the whole site, and then the red line, the small red square, demonstrates the rough location of the proposed building. Next photo, please. So this is the entrance to the site, facing east. As you can see here, there's a large amount of mature planting on the northern boundary between Boynton Lane and the application site. So this is an image of the site sort of almost as a whole from the top corner. You can see the grazing areas for the livestock at the very far end, at the back of the photo there, while the new building will be situated to the left of the track and the two cars that you can see on the image. This is just another image of the southern end of the site, where the paddocks are. So this is the existing structure on the site. So as you can see, it's in a poor state of repair, and the proposed building would be situated on the footprint of that structure. And this is just the front of that existing building. So to help members orientate themselves from this angle on the proposed building, you would be looking at the southwestern elevation, which features just the one personnel door. So this is the top half of the site looking back towards where the building is proposed to be. You might just be able to appreciate on the right hand side of the photo there's a second access gate into the site. So the track you saw on the previous image, that kind of is banana shaped. It loops round between those two gates, and then the building's proposed to be kind of in the bow of that track. So this is another image towards where the building is proposed to be, sort of looking west. And then this is the same view, just a slightly closer. So from this position, if you were looking towards the proposed building, it would be the southeast elevation where the main large agricultural opening on the building would be. So this image is just taken from outside the main access into the site, looking back towards Butterwick Village. So that's Boynton Lane there, just to give members some context of the site. And then this is from the same position, but looking sort of directly towards the site. So that is the hedgerow on the northern boundary as such. And then this has been taken from the public right-of-way to the northeast of the site. So that's the secondary access gate and the end of the track there. So this is probably one of the only positions where the new building will be visible from outside of the site. I think that's the last photo. Yes, so thank you, Chairman. The recommendation is one of approval, subject to the conditions proposed in the report.
Thank you, Ellie. Does Mr. Philip Tate wish to speak?
Yes, I do.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I represent the 8 objectors to this proposal, and I speak on their behalf. I'm going to cut straight to the chase. Firstly, policy SP1 is a major policy that is concerned with the location of new residential development within the planning authority. It has nothing to do with the construction of a new barn to provide accommodation for a small herd of breeding alpaca. 3 new field shelters have already been positioned on site for this purpose. Secondly, there is no reason to separate the application site from the rest of the holding which it serves. And this is very important because approval would grant different status to an area of land with roadside frontage, a status which would later impact upon policy that is relevant to any further development. And this is a real concern. There is great uncertainty about the future use of this new barn. Now, in normal circumstances, this would be irrelevant because approval is simply being sought for general agricultural use and storage. However, there is now evidence that the applicant has already begun marketing the site as a retreat. In fact, since August the 3rd, the applicant has been actively seeking visitors. So this would constitute a recreational use or a tourist use. The recommendation for approval is therefore entirely wrong to express the view so unequivocally that the proposal is for agricultural use. And the report is again wrong to imply that local objection has diminished with each successive change of description. Because there has been no material change to the original proposal, none of the early objections have been withdrawn. All the objections remain current, especially those centred upon the principle of development. But of course, these were all made without knowledge of the applicant's true intent. To conclude, I would say this, that the use of the site is already changing from an agricultural one to a recreational one, despite the fact that the Facebook page advertising its attraction was removed only this afternoon. But I think members should actually have hard copies of those earlier postings. So this present application is no longer fit for purpose. The policy relevant to new agricultural buildings in open countryside simply no longer apply. I think that this application should be refused and that a new application invited which would legitimise its intended use, because to do otherwise would require the council to grant approval for a scheme of which it was fully aware that the applicant was already in breach.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Does Mark Newby there? Are you ready to speak, Mark Newby?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. The applicants purchased the land and buildings as part of their retirement plans to keep, raise and breed alpacas, together with the keeping of sheep, goats, chickens and ducks, all commensurate with the nature of the site and local area, and as a result now require a suitable building to support this purpose. Officers support the principle of the erection of the proposed building to replace the existing lawful, dilapidated and unsightly building, which is not fit for purpose. We submit that the building proposed is in accordance with policies SP1 and SP9 of the local plan strategy, which support land-based activity and the rural economy. Officers also support the design of the building, which is of a simple and unobtrusive form and of a functional and agricultural appearance which would not be out of character with the surrounding landscape. The building will not be particularly prominent or dominant in the landscape due to its scale and proposed materials and its siting against the existing mature boundary of hedges of the site. The building would not be particularly visible from public vantage points, and as such it's not considered that it would be a prominent addition to the locality, and moreover will replace an unsightly existing building. We submit that the proposed building is considered to comply with policies SP 13 and 16 of the local plan strategy. The building would be sited away from neighbouring properties and as such would not result in any adverse impacts on their amenity. It's considered that the building is compatible with the established surrounding agricultural land use, and it's not anticipated that it would give any rise to unacceptable visual impact or disturbance. In terms of potential odour from manure storage, this would be controlled by a suitable planning condition as proposed by officers. We submit, therefore, that subject to the appropriate planning condition, it's not considered that the building would result in an adverse impact on residential amenity and would be in accordance with policy SP 20 of the local plan strategy. In terms of statutory consultees, there are no objections from the council's environmental health officers or the Environment Agency. As far as the objection that the site and adjacent land are being used as an alpaca retreat, I have advised the applicants today that any such use shall cease immediately, and if they intend to continue that use, it shall only do so with the necessary planning permission, which would in any case be the subject of a future planning application for the council's consideration. The current application before you tonight does not include any use as suggested, nor is it the intention to do so. In terms of the other objections to the proposals, we have to say that the content is not only misinformed, but quite frankly disgraceful, being of a personal and possibly libelous nature towards the applicants. Indeed, the person who left an anonymous note on a site entrance threatening the applicant's animals should be ashamed of themselves. You will not be surprised to hear that this matter is now in the hands of the police. However, to conclude, we submit that the proposals are in accordance with the local plan and NPPF, and that there are no other material considerations or sound planning reasons which would prevent approval of the application. Thank you.
I think before we move on, I think the officers ought to have the opportunity of coming back on the issue as to whether or not this is the right title for the application.
Chairman, if I can just come back on that, and indeed the council's legal advisor for the meeting may also wish to comment, but I think it's very important not to conflate two issues here. The application is for an operational development for the erection of a building. Some of the objections that we've received tonight are relating to a potential future use, a material change of use perhaps, which is nothing to do with the operational development that's before you on paper tonight. So you can only deal with the application before you. I think I've heard that said many a time in this committee. So it's important not to conflate the two issues. But I'm happy to take any legal advice on that if members feel the need.
Legal advice? Do you want to comment?
I think Alpha Loveco is actually on the screen, Chair.
Right. Do you wish to comment, Alpha?
Chairman, I would only echo what Gary has said, but if there is a specific legal question, I am happy to answer it.
Are there any questions? Councillor Cleary.
Questions to the officer rather than the legal advisor on the application. The application states that including the housing of livestock. If I could refer to page 98, which gives the elevations of the proposed building, could you confirm that the only openings are a roller shutter door on the southeast elevation and a personnel door on the southwest elevation, and that the building is actually sealed? Doesn't appear to be any natural ventilation which would be consistent with a livestock building.
I think in the context of what many of us regard a livestock building to be, I mean, it's not intensive keeping of pigs or anything of that nature. I think I would more have described this as a general purpose building that will be occasionally used for livestock. And I think Ellie mentioned birthing and things of that nature. But yes, you're correct. The number of openings is fairly limited. There's a personnel door on the one elevation and what I take to be a roller type door on the end gable. But although obviously that's quite a sizable opening given the size of the building, it is fairly modest in proportion.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm addressing Gary, if I may. It seems a reasonably simple solution to some of the problems we've got here would be that a condition, an agricultural condition, should be pretty watertight and should include not only the building but the area of approximately 7 acres, I think it is, because the two go together. So there's no reason why you should put an agricultural building on the site if you are not including the land on which the livestock are inhabit. With regard to ventilation and it being unimportant, I just, I have an agricultural background and I've not...
Excuse me, Councillor Ryby, but we're in questions.
Sorry.
Was you going to go on to ask a question?
So, the question is that the ventilation, in my opinion, would be totally inadequate for any livestock, and new money would invariably follow. Or am I wrong about that?
Well, you're probably straying beyond the realms of planning, I think, when we're talking about animal welfare. But, I mean, in the context of coming back to your first point, in terms of the plan on page 98, which shows the red and the blue line is not intending to divorce anything from it. In fact, it's an indication of the remaining land that goes with the extent of the application site, which is just the access and the erection of the building that's being applied for. It's not actually seeking to propose any material change of use of the land, which is agricultural land. Similarly, the use that the development that we're being asked to approve tonight is actually a use that is consistent with the rest of the land. It's not seeking permission for any other material change of use of the building, which, as we've already heard, would be the subject of further control. So, you're dealing with two separate issues. In terms, there are two threads of development. One is in relation to the erection of buildings, and the other is in relation to the material change of use of land or buildings. What we've been asked to approve here is a building, and it's not just a building, it's a building replacing what I think in anybody else's language would be some fairly dilapidated buildings, which, whilst well screened from most directions, are actually visible from elements of the public right-of-way that goes past the site. And so, again, there's I would suggest, an enhancement of getting rid of what are lawful, fairly unattractive buildings, and their replacement with something which is of a similar proportion, but of a better design. So we've dealt with it very much on the basis of this is an operational development. It's not approving any material change of use of the land or the buildings to anything else.
Councillor Hope.
Thank you, Chairman. Way on there. That's it. Come on. I don't bother with technology. A straightforward question. Are alpacas classed as agriculture or pets?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the breeding of alpacas, I would suggest, is an agricultural use of land. Alpacas are also raised for their I'll call it fur, but I'm sure it's wool. And they're also very often it's not necessarily breeding them to eat them, but actually breeding them to then for stock for other alpacas. So yes, I would say it's an agricultural use, but not many people that probably are eating alpaca, but probably won't be too long. We've eaten everything else.
A point of information, Mr. Chairman, I believe also sheep farmers buy them to guard sheep because alpacas are quite good guard animals.
Are there any more questions? In that case, we'll go into debate. Now, whose ward is this in? Well, who would like to start the debate? Councillor Cleary.
I'm quite happy to lead. Yeah, I mean, the objections seem to be. This is, although there are questions over the design of the building, it is an agricultural building. It's well located. It replaces dilapidated accommodation. Let's call it accommodation rather than buildings. The objectors seem to be worried about the potential future use, which we can't deal with tonight. And I'm very happy to move officer's recommendation.
Is that seconded? Councillor Hope seconds that. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as it's quite rightly been stated, we can only look at what's in front of us tonight, and that's the building. Looking at the dilapidated state of the one at the moment, I think it's a big improvement, and I would support this. Thank you.
Councillor Potter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with what all the others have said, and having read the agenda item, the report, I agreed with it all. I would have been quite happy to support it. However, when I look at the Facebook page and in relation to what the agent said about it being, well, whatever it was, unacceptable or so on, but unfortunately this does not accord with the proposal on the front page of the agenda. Erection of replacement building for general purpose agricultural storage, etc. Yes, we have to look at the application in front of us, but as this is a Facebook page quite clearly from the applicant and his wife, because they are named on there, the front page says, it says something about this is for friends and family. I saw somewhere it was about for friends and family. This Facebook page already has 275 members. That's a big friendship group or a large family. Also, what else have we got in here? Yeah, there's a page where Mr. Christopher Ramsey, who is clearly the applicant, says, near Moulton, it's a new business venture for 2022. Now, he has said it's a business venture. Well, that's not what it says in the proposal. Again, Anna Ramsey says, for any families who are looking for places to visit during the school holidays, we are down with our animals every afternoon. To me, that sounds quite clearly as though it is a business proposition. So while I appreciate that the actual application before us passes muster, it would appear that there is a clear desire to take this further, and while it has clearly got to have separate planning permission to do so, I take rather a dim view of the way this has been approached, so I shall be abstaining. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ryby.
I mirror my views that Councillor Potter just said, and yeah, we're judging the building. I accept that, but the argument for the building is based on some of the stuff that we've got here. Irrefutable that we've been led perhaps down the garden path, the alpaca path. I think the solution is quite simple, and I said it before in my so-called questions or debate, that the conditions, if they're made sufficiently stringent that it is agricultural, then I'd go along with the improvement of the derelict buildings into good buildings. But the conditions must be good enough, in my opinion, to make sure that we aren't entering into we've seen lots of things about alpacas on the telly and all the rest of it. And yeah, but we should only give permission if it's backed up by genuine information. And
Does anybody else wish to speak? Well, just let me finish, go through the debate and come back to the officers. Does anybody else wish to speak? Coming then to the officers, at the pre-meeting we did consider conditions and we did consider an informative. Do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, Chairman. I think on the one hand an informative, either on the decision notice or something in the way of a separate letter clarifying exactly what it is that we're granting planning permission for, which is the building, the operational development, not a material change of use. Is what I would suggest. But in terms of condition, it's an unnecessary condition. If there is a material change of use, it will need planning permission. Yeah. So we're granting planning permission for a building, not a change of use, or not a material change of use. So, totally accept what you're saying, Councillor Robbie, but you don't need a condition, because development will have occurred if there is a material change of use, and that will require planning permission. So So it's an unnecessary condition. It doesn't meet the test of condition.
I ask the proposer of the motion if he would accept and if he would add to the motion that an informative be added onto the face of the permission itself, making this clear.
I think I would leave it to the discretion of the Chief Planning Officer, who has offered that, and if it helps mitigate or if it helps prevent future misunderstandings on behalf of the applicant, then I'll be all for it. But the application is for an agricultural building, nothing to do with the material change of use.
I think the planning officer has given his advice, which he says he would support that, but I think you've got to actually put it in your motion.
Then I would amend my motion to support the officer's recommendation as stated, with the addition of the advice at the discretion of the Chief Planning Officer to add or to remit, to send an informative to the applicant. Does that cover it off, Gary? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Hope, would you agree with that? Yeah. Does anybody wish to speak before we go to the vote? Can we go to the vote then, please, Gary?
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a proposal for approval with the additional informative note to accompany the decision notice. Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Brackstone.
For.
Councillor Cleary.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hope. For. Councillor Keel.
For.
Councillor Mackenzie.
For.
Councillor Potter.
Abstain.
Councillor Ryby.
Abstain.
Councillor Windrus.
For.
So, Chairman, that's 8 votes for and 2 abstentions. Thank you.
So that concludes that item. Can we now go on to item 8, which is 21-00518 MOUT. It's a major application by Mulgrave Developments Limited for planning permission. I won't read it all out. The erection of a commercial building, for full planning permission for the erection of 67 number dwellings, and outline planning permission for extension of the first phase building with further commercial development to the east of Westland Lane, and full planning permission for works of Westland Lane and the former railway bridge. I'll read it out in full if members wish, but I don't think it's necessary. I believe it's your report, is it, Gary?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, this, as members will have picked up from the report, is still an application in process. But as members will have seen, it's a major application. It's full in part, although it's a hybrid application, and has raised a number of issues, some in principle dealing with matters of principle, but some dealing with matters of detail, as you can imagine. And obviously we've received, as you've picked up from the report, quite a number of responses from local residents and the town council. We've corresponded with all of those people to advise that we're proposing to the meeting tonight that members carry out a member site inspection before a final decision on the application is made, and that remains the recommendation, Chairman, because it's a significant development and also it raises a number of issues as I've described. Nevertheless, we have received 2 responses in writing, which I think members all should have copies of, one of which I think is from the objector who's registered to speak tonight, and Mr. Slack. And without going through all of that, because obviously that's Mr. Slack's speech, in essence, the comments that we received in are really going to the merit discussion rather than whether or not there should be a site visit, which is really the recommendation tonight. As I say, it remains the officer recommendation that before a final decision is made on the application at a future meeting of this committee, that a committee site inspection does take place.
Thank you. Now we have one speaker, Graham Slack, The question is, Mr. Slack, do you wish to speak now, or would you rather reserve your speech for later when this matter actually comes to the committee? That is on the assumption that the committee is minded to go for a site visit. I'm prepared to do whatever you wish. If you wish to speak now, please do so. If you prefer to leave it until later, that might be to your advantage. I'm not sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the basis that I may not be available when you have your next meeting, I think it's prudent that I read out my thoughts, much in line with some of the written information I've already sent to you.
Thank you. And in that case, would you like to make your presentation? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, my name is Graham Slack and I live at Fieldview, Westland Lane. Of 50 responses to the consultation document, only 3 were in favour of the proposed development. And at a meeting of Kirkby Moorside Town Council on the 26th of April, the planning application was discussed and participants were unanimously against the proposal. Westland Lane is used as a recreational safe area by local dog walkers, joggers, cyclists and families, especially during the recent pandemic. This would be lost should this application be approved. There are already 257 homes currently being built and a further 45 proposed off Squinners Lane. District Policy SP2 directs 300 new homes for the area over the plan period, so that number has already been met. Silotech wish to build houses to fund their expansion and not for the local housing need. Policy document SD13 clearly states that the site in question is not included within development limits and is not designated for housing. If this proposal is approved, it paves the way for other future housing developments outside the development limits. Kirkby Moorside is a small market town with very limited employment opportunities. The population of Kirkby Moorside will already be increasing by around 30% without this proposed development. This will go against government's carbon neutral strategy as commuting to work will greatly increase. Would these homes be restricted to existing Rydale residents or those working in Rydale, or are the developers merely encouraging an exodus from the surrounding cities? The use of Westland Lane as a sole access to the new development would increase traffic flow on a narrow lane where parking is at a premium for existing residents. This junction is also used by families taking children to school, crossing the A170 at the exit of Westland Lane. Additional traffic will again cause an increase in risk. The proposed factory access from Westland Lane supposedly will only be used as vehicular access for visitors, and it is not proposed to take commercial traffic down Westland Lane. Why then are there plans to increase the carriageway to 5.5 metres, sufficient for 2 large goods vehicles? Once a new access way has been created, commercial vehicles would be anticipated to access the proposed Phase 3 units down Westland Lane in the future. For this reason, any expansion of Silotech must be dependent on using the existing perfectly adequate access road from the A170. The proposed new factory access from Westland Lane is not required. Both Kirkby Moorside Primary and Rydale schools have projected shortfalls in places even before this proposed development. How will the suggested financial contribution of £400,000 actually translate into actual additional space? Doctor and dentist services are already over capacity, even before the current builds are completed and occupied. Some patients are already waiting 4 weeks to see a doctor. The waiting list for the dentist is several hundred for NHS patients and even 150 for private treatment. The beauty of Kirkby Moorside is that it retains a small market town feel and is largely unspoilt. With ever-increasing development, turning it into an urban sprawl is so short-sighted, it will become undesirable and cease to be a nice place to visit or indeed live. It will have the houses but without the infrastructure of a Pickering or Helmsley. Far from helping the businesses in the town, most newcomers will commute to Moulton or Thirst for shopping. I employ the committee to reject this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that. Do members have any questions before we go into debate as to whether or not we want to go to a site visit rather? Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think it might be a good idea for Mr. Housden to give us an outline of the how this aligns with the existing local plan and how it's, what it's already down for. Thanks.
Well, I would hope that members, if they can get to the right page, probably page 113 onwards, if you can see the extent of the red line there, you'll see that what that denotes in essence is the extent of the existing built-up area of the town. So you've got the development on the eastern side along Ings Lane, and to the north a newer development, probably 80s, Slingsby Garth and that part, together with the existing factory area. And that line pretty much forms the line of the development limit as it currently stands in the sites document. Having said that, the sites document identifies an area of the site which is what I would describe as the northern, probably slightly over the northern half of the site, as being expansion land for Kirby Moorside, so for employment purposes. So there are elements of this proposal which could be described as plan compliant, but equally the residential development would be outside development limits. So you're dealing with the development outside of the development plan. So it's then a question of in terms of I don't want to stray into the merit arguments, but it's then a question of the arguments that have been put forward by the applicants to justify development that's not wholly in accordance with your development plan.
Councillor Ryby?
Are we still in question?
Yes. Are there any more questions? In that case, can we go into debate, and I will propose from the Chair the officer's recommendation. Proposed and seconded. No, it's proposed and seconded by Councillor Potter. Would you wish to speak, Councillor Ryby?
So we're in debate. The Westland Lane site is, for a visit, I oppose, because I believe the total proposal is not of good merit. And the reason I think it's not of good merit is that, as we've already heard, Kirby Moorside is expanding at a rapid rate, and housing is... I wish Salatech the best, and I want them to expand. However, to ride on the back of increased housing is not their business. They're not property developers, they're engineers. And therefore, I think the proposal is wrong. The infrastructure is at its limit in Kirby Moorside already. However, the Kirby Moorside already has an industrial estate known as Kirby Mills, which is very successful. It's full at the moment, but there is opportunity to expand. And I really believe that the planning officers should encourage the developers to reconsider their planning proposal. I think where you mix urban development and industrial development is asking for trouble, and is really a very old-fashioned idea. The old factory owner who owned the houses was the boss, and those days have long since gone. So the people that live in the houses will not be working for Salatech, or very few. I think that we should consider discussing with them what I would regard as a planning gain, whereby they relocate to Kirby Mills, and we give them planning permission for a limited amount of housing on the area where the factory units are. This will take out the problem out of any sort of situation. The housing will remain housing and will not be influenced by factory units close by. The company will have a new start with a green site, and they will also get an input of money from selling their site for development. We will retain the field in the countryside. It's a win-win situation, whereas as far as I'm concerned, and I think the majority of people in Kirby Millside would regard the situation now as a lose-lose situation. And therefore, I don't think a site visit is worthwhile, because it's a non-go for the people that are really concerned about it. We should really review the situation. We should encourage Salatec to develop, but we should encourage them to develop and relocate at Kirby Mills, which is an industrial estate. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are lots of times that you look at plans and you could wish you could go with a different hat on and say you should do this, you should do that. That's not really our job. I agree with you entirely in what you're proposing, but that's not what we're being asked to do. That's not the application or the potential application in front of us. We're being asked at the moment to go and visit the site, so that when it comes through, we're better advised. So I will be supporting a site visit.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a major development. Obviously a little bit contentious, and I will be supporting the officer's recommendation for a site visit. Thank you.
Councillor Potter, you seconded this motion for a site visit. Do you wish to speak? Does anybody else wish to speak? Do the officers want to come back?
No, Chairman. I think if we're ready to take a vote on the site visit.
Can we go to the vote then, please?
This is for a site inspection. Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Braxton.
For.
Councillor Cleary.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hope. For. Councillor Keel.
For.
Councillor Mackenzie. For. Councillor Potter.
For.
Councillor Ryby.
Against.
Councillor Windris. So that's a vote, 9 votes to 1 for site inspection, Chair.
Thank you. So there will be a site inspection. So we now come to item number 9, any other business. I'm not aware there's any other business. And then there's the list of applications determined under delegated powers. Does anybody have any questions of any of the items on that list? Then there's I don't think there are any appeals, are there?
Not this time, Chair.
So the only remaining item of business is to discuss the date for the site visit.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mean, ordinarily we have these midway between meetings. Obviously tonight's a bit of an odd one as it's a Wednesday meeting, but ordinarily we would have the site inspection 2 weeks from the meeting, so that would lead us either to the 14th or the 15th of September for both, or suggest both on the same day. So the 14th is a Tuesday, the 15th is a Wednesday.
I would suggest the 14th, if everybody's happy with that. I have a meeting on the 15th. What about Monday? What about Monday the 13th?
I was just about to say, it doesn't have to be. We choose our own day for the site inspection, Chairman. If Monday the 13th works better for more members, then
that would work for me.
So be it. Monday the 13th. I think it possibly is worth, if we're doing them in an order, going to Howsham first and then to the Kirby one second, because I think that's probably going to take probably a little bit more time. It's then a question of a start time at Howsham, Chairman.
Can we say 10 o'clock?
Councillor.
Sorry.
Well, 11.
No, any objections to 11 o'clock?
Okay, well, we'll start at Howsham at 11. I think that probably won't take too long as a visit. Then we'll just have to judge some time to get to Kirby Moorside, so it'll probably be a little after midday, I would guess, before we're at Kirby, but then it could be an hour there at least.
So we bring our packed lunches.
So we're starting at 11 on the 13th. Okay.
Is that agreed?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, that's the final item of the agenda. I close the meeting.